Admiral Zixil's 6 limbs twitched nervously as the holographic display painted a bleak picture of the battle. The Galactic Confederation fleet was being methodically torn apart by the Vorax Dominion forces, their superior firepower reducing Allied cruisers to expanding clouds of debris. Sparks showered from a damaged console nearby, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the bridge. "How many ships remaining, Commander Plex?" The Admiral's voice was steady, despite the circumstances. 15 solar cycles of military service had taught him to maintain composure, even when staring defeat in all 4 of its eyes. 37 functional vessels, Admiral. The Vorax have 112, replied the scaled officer, whose skin had paled to a sickly yellow-green. At current attrition rates, we'll be completely overwhelmed in approximately 27 minutes. And reinforcements? Zixil already knew the answer, but protocol demanded he ask. Nearest battle group is 3 hours away, so we're on our own. Commander Plex's tail drooped noticeably, a cultural sign of resignation that protocol couldn't mask. The command bridge of the Confederation flagship Eternal Vigilance fell silent, except for the persistent beeping of warning systems and damage reports flowing in from the remaining fleet. Admiral Zixil had been tasked with defending the Helios sector, a strategic position that, if lost, would expose 3 heavily populated Confederation systems to Vorax aggression. The death toll would be catastrophic. Reroute power from non-essential systems to forward shields and prepare for a concentrated assault on their command vessel, ordered Zixil, knowing full well it was a desperate gambit. If we can eliminate their central coordination— Admiral, the sensor officer Trell interrupted, mandibles clicking in agitation. Unknown anomaly detected at coordinates 47821005. On the tactical display, a swirling vortex of energy appeared at the edge of the battlefield, its signature matching no known Confederation or Vorax technology. The anomaly pulsed with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space, sending cascading errors through the sensor array. Is it reinforcements? Zixil allowed himself a moment of hope, his dorsal fins rising slightly. Negative, sir. Signature doesn't match any registered Confederation ally. Trell's antennae twitched as he adjusted the scanning parameters. I don't recognize this warp signature at all. The quantum fluctuations are completely unorthodox. Another Vorax weapon? Asked Commander Plex, his scales flushing anxiously. I know, sir, but I don't believe so. The energy patterns are inconsistent with Vorax technology. It's almost as if whoever created this anomaly doesn't fully understand the principles they're working with, yet somehow it functions anyway. The bridge crew watched as the anomaly stabilized and a single vessel emerged. It was roughly cylindrical, with angular protrusions along its hull that might have been weapon systems or sensor arrays. Compared to the sleek, organic curves of Confederation ships or the sharp, predatory angles of Vorax vessels, this newcomer looked cobbled together, almost crude. Its hull bore scorch marks and hastily applied armor patches, suggesting recent combat or hasty construction. Size comparison places it at medium cruiser class, reported Commander Plex, his claws dancing across the tactical console. Primitive design, energy readings are unusual. Their power core appears to be operating well beyond safe parameters, and there are radiation signatures I can't even classify. Hail them, ordered Zixil, his secondary eyelids blinking rapidly, and maintain combat readiness. This could be a Vorax trap. The communications officer worked his console, his 4-fingered hands moving with practiced efficiency. No response to standard Confederation protocols, he reported after a moment. Trying alternative frequencies, still nothing. Wait. They're broadcasting on an ancient radio frequency, audio only. How delightfully archaic. Put it through, Zixil commanded, straightening his ceremonial collar. The voice that filled the bridge was bizarrely casual given the circumstances, crackling with static and punctuated by what sounded like someone chewing. This is Captain Morgan Reeves of the CSS Tenacity, representing the United Earth Coalition. Hope we're not interrupting anything important. You guys look like you're having a rough day. The sarcasm was evident, even through the translator matrices. Zixil's skin mottled with confusion, dark patches spreading across his normally uniform blue epidermis. Unknown vessel, you have entered an active combat zone during a Confederation military operation. State your intentions immediately, or you will be considered hostile. Zixil tried to inject appropriate gravity into his voice. A sound came through the comm that the translators identified as laughter, followed by what might have been liquid being swallowed. Yeah, we noticed the light show. Looks like you folks could use a hand. We've been monitoring this conflict for a while, and frankly, we're tired of watching from the sidelines while these Vorax jerks expand their territory. The whole conquer everything that moves shtick is so last millennium. Zixil's membranes fluttered in shock. Monitoring Earth? Last I checked, Captain Reeves replied with unmistakable amusement. And before you mention how the Confederation Council deemed us too primitive for meaningful galactic participation about 8 years back, let's just say we took that as a challenge, not a final answer. Nothing motivates humans like being told we can't do something. The entire bridge crew exchanged looks of disbelief. Humans were a recently discovered species from a backwater system, barely achieving faster than light travel. Their application for Confederation membership had been politely but firmly rejected due to their technological inferiority and concerning historical tendencies toward violence. The diplomatic reports had described them as promising but premature, with a regrettable fixation on conflict resolution through force. Sir, Commander Plex whispered, leaning close to Zixil's auditory membrane, the Vorax are regrouping. Their main battle fleet is resuming attack formation. Whatever we decide about these humans, we need to decide quickly. Captain Reeves, Zixil said urgently, trying to sound both authoritative and non-dismissive, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this battlefield is no place for an untested vessel. The Vorax Dominion has destroyed 3 of our battle groups today alone. One ship, especially of your technological level, cannot hope to. With all due respect, Admiral, Reeves interrupted, the sound of metal clanking suggesting he'd just put his feet up on something. We didn't come all this way to ask permission. We came to fight. Consider this our reapplication for Confederation membership. The practical exam portion. Actions speak louder than words, as we say on Earth. Before Zixil could respond, the tactical display updated. The human vessel was accelerating directly toward the Vorax formation, moving at speeds that seemed dangerously reckless, given the debris field. Are they insane? Gasped Trell, his mandibles clicking rapidly in the Arthrosian equivalent of nervous hiccups. Their navigational systems must be malfunctioning. Sir, the communications officer called out, his voice rising in confusion. We're receiving additional transmissions from the human ship. It appears to be what they call music? Heavy, rhythmic sounds filled the Confederation bridge, accompanied by aggressive vocals that the translation matrix struggled to interpret properly. Something about thunderstruck and highway to hell that made no contextual sense in a space battle. They're broadcasting this openly? Zixil was aghast, his respiratory sacs inflating in alarm. The Vorax can hear this too? Affirmative, Admiral. It appears to be deliberate. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. It's tactical suicide, Commander Plex muttered. They've announced their presence to every Vorax sensor array in the sector. On the tactical display, the lone human ship continued its seemingly suicidal charge toward the Vorax fleet, which had now taken notice of the newcomer. Several Vorax destroyers broke formation to intercept, their weapon systems powering up. Open a channel, Zixil demanded, his voice rising with genuine concern. Captain Reeves, you are about to be engaged by multiple Vorax warships. Each one outguns your vessel significantly. Retreat immediately. Yeah, we can count, came the casual reply. The bridge of the Tenacity was visible now on the view screen, and Zixil was shocked to see several crew members consuming food items while monitoring their stations. One was even drinking from a container labeled coffee while adjusting weapon controls. The bridge itself was utilitarian, with exposed conduits and jury-rig systems that would never pass Confederation safety protocols. Is this amusing to you? Zixil's voice rose, his skin flushing to a deep azure in agitation. You're about to be destroyed. Lighten up, Admiral, said a woman with dark hair pulled back tightly, who was casually rewiring something under her console while speaking. "I'm Jasmine Chen, Chief Engineer. Our ship might look like garbage compared to your pretty fleet, but we've made some creative modifications. Sometimes the best innovations come from desperation and duct tape." "Incoming Vorax fire," warned Commander Plex, his voice tense. On the tactical display, energy beams from the 3 Vorax destroyers converged on the human vessel. The Confederation crew held their breath, expecting to witness the immediate destruction of the foolhardy ship. Instead, the CSS Tenacity performed a maneuver that Zixil would have deemed physically impossible. The ship seemed to pivot on its axis at an angle that should have torn it apart, allowing the majority of the Vorax energy weapons to pass harmlessly by. Where the beams did make contact, an unusual rippling field dispersed much of the energy. "Did they just—" Trell couldn't finish his sentence, his mandibles hanging slack. "Yep, we did," came Reeves' voice, sounding ridiculously pleased. "Kwame, show them what we brought to the party." A dark-skinned human grinned into the camera, revealing white teeth. "Tactical Officer Kwame Osei at your service. Watch and learn, folks. This is how we do things downtown." The Tenacity unleashed a barrage of missiles, primitive by Confederation standards with their visible exhaust trails and metallic casings, but their trajectory was bewildering. Instead of heading directly for targets, they spiraled outward in seemingly random patterns. "Those projectiles will never hit at that trajectory," observed Commander Plex with professional disdain. "The targeting algorithms are completely—" Then, simultaneously, the missiles altered course at impossible angles, accelerating toward the Vorax destroyers from multiple directions. The Vorax shields, calibrated to deflect attacks from predictable vectors, failed to adjust in time. 3 explosions bloomed in space, their expanding spheres of destruction clearly visible against the backdrop of stars. What just happened?" demanded Zixil, rising from his command chair in astonishment. "Multi-phase propulsion with delayed targeting algorithms," explained Jasmine Chen, between bites of something the translator identified as a sandwich. "The Vorax rely on predictive defense systems, so we built something unpredictable. Their fancy shields are great at stopping things they expect, but terrible against things they don't." "That's impossible with your level of technology," insisted Commander Plex, his claws clicking against his console in agitation. "The computing power required to coordinate that kind of attack pattern—" "Is it, though?" Kwame laughed, taking a swig from a container. "Seems like we just did it. Sometimes you don't need the fanciest computer when good old human intuition works just as well. Plus, we've got Lucy." "Who is Lucy?" Zixil asked, completely lost. "Not who, what," replied Reeves. "She's our AI. Say hi, Lucy." "Hello, Admiral Zixil," came a distinctly feminine voice that somehow managed to sound both professional and mildly contemptuous at the same time. "I'd say it's a pleasure to meet you, but that would imply your tactical decisions thus far have been something other than a masterclass in how to lose a space battle." Zixil's translator struggled with the concept, but the sentiment was clear. He'd just been insulted by a machine. The Tenacity pressed forward, now engaging the main Vorax fleet. By all logic, a single ship should have been instantly vaporized, yet somehow the human vessel danced through enemy fire, exploiting gaps in formations that Confederation tactical systems hadn't even identified. "The Vorax are adjusting their patterns," reported Trell, his antennae twitching rapidly. "They're treating the human ship as a priority target, 3 heavy cruisers breaking off to engage." "Of course they are," Reeves sounded almost offended. "We just took out 3 of their ships while you guys were busy getting your butts kicked. Nothing pisses off a bully more than someone who fights back." "Captain," Zixil struggled to maintain diplomatic protocols while processing the rapidly changing tactical situation. "How is your vessel performing these maneuvers? Your inertial dampening system should be overwhelmed, your hull integrity compromised. Your crew should be experiencing lethal forces." "Oh, they absolutely would be," Jasmine Chen chimed in, now drinking from a container labeled a journey drink, while simultaneously soldering something off camera. "If we were using standard dampeners, we reverse-engineered some Vorax technology we found a while back. Integrated it with our own systems. Turns out their inertial field generators work really well when you overcharge them by about 300%. Highly unsafe, definitely unstable, but effective. You stole Vorax technology? Zixil was scandalized, his respiratory sacs deflating in shock. Salvaged, corrected Reeves, making air quotes with his fingers that the translation system struggled to interpret. From a crashed scout ship, finders keepers. Look, Admiral, are you going to help us fight or just watch the show? Because I've got to say, your fleet's performance so far has been less than impressive. We didn't fly halfway across the sector to save your shiny blue butts by ourselves. Zixil's pride was stung, but the tactical situation was undeniable. The human ship was creating an unexpected opportunity by drawing Vorax's attention and disrupting their carefully coordinated attack patterns. All vessels, he commanded, his voice resonating with newfound determination. Reform on grid coordinates 507090. Prepare to engage the Vorax Central Formation. Focus on their support ships while they're distracted by the human vessel. As the Confederation forces reorganized, the Tenacity continued its improbable assault. On the Vorax command ship, Supreme Commander Drakthul was growing increasingly agitated, his armored exoskeleton creaking as he paced the command deck. "Identify that vessel," he roared at his subordinates, bioluminescent patches on his carapace flashing in fury. "How is it bypassing our shield harmonics? How does it anticipate our formation changes?" "Unknown, Supreme Commander," replied his second Vex Corps, hunched in deference. "It appears to be a previously unencountered species. Primitive design, but effective tactics. Our database has no record of this configuration." "Primitive?" Drakthul's armored carapace flexed in anger. "It has destroyed 5 of our vessels. Direct all fire on that ship. I want it obliterated. I want its atoms scattered across 3 sectors. I want its very existence erased from the cosmic record." The Vorax fleet responded, concentrating their formidable firepower on the Tenacity. This time, even the unorthodox human evasion tactics couldn't completely avoid the barrage. The ship shuddered under multiple impacts, its hull glowing in places from the energy absorption. "Damage report," called Reeves, as his bridge crew were thrown against their restraints. The camera feed from the Tenacity shook violently and several overhead conduits ruptured, spewing steam. "Shields at 42%, reported a red-haired human who seemed remarkably calm despite the chaos. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, automatically sealed. Weapon systems still operational. Primary coolant line ruptured, but auxiliary systems are compensating." "Lucy, status?" Reeves asked, wiping blood from a small cut on his forehead. A disembodied female voice responded with a tone that somehow combined efficiency with annoyance. "All critical systems functioning within acceptable parameters, Captain, though I should note that your definition of acceptable continues to diverge significantly from mine. At current damage rates, we have approximately 17 minutes before catastrophic hull failure. May I suggest a slightly less suicidal approach?" "When has that ever worked for us?" Reeves laughed, though the tension in his voice was evident. "Kwame, target their flagship. Let's go for the big one." "You're going after Drakthul directly?" Zixil couldn't believe what he was hearing. "That's their strongest ship. Their flagship has defenses that our entire fleet couldn't penetrate." "Exactly," Reeves nodded, as if explaining something to a child. "Cut off the head, body falls, basic tactics." "Basic suicide," corrected Zixil, his skin mottling with stress patterns. "Otatopa." Reeves shrugged, the idiom completely losing meaning in translation. "Admiral, have your remaining ships target these coordinates when we give the signal." Data streamed to the Confederation flagship, a complex series of tactical positions highlighted in red. Zixil analyzed the information, his 4 eyes widening in sequence. "These are the locations of their escort vessels." "Yep, we're going to punch a hole straight through their formation. When we do, hit them with everything you've got." Despite his better judgment, Zixil found himself issuing the orders. The remaining Confederation fleet moved into position, weapons charged and ready. Many of the captains expressed reservations about following an untested human strategy, but the alternative was certain defeat. On board the Tenacity, Captain Reeves addressed his crew. "All right, folks, time for the Trojan Horse special, just like we practiced, except this time with actual bloodthirsty aliens trying to kill us. I calculate a 31.7% survival probability for this maneuver," Lucy commented dryly, "which I feel compelled to point out means a 68.3% chance of horrible, fiery death." "That high?" Jasmine seemed genuinely surprised as she frantically rerouted power through a jury-rigged console. "We're improving. Last time we tried something this crazy, you gave us a 12% chance." "I've adjusted my calculations to account for your inexplicable luck," Lucy replied. "It defies statistical analysis." The Tenacity suddenly cut all external emissions and appeared to drift, as if critically damaged. Its running lights dimmed and several small explosions were visible along its hull, carefully controlled detonations designed to look like critical system failures. "What are they doing?" Trell asked nervously, his antennae drooping in confusion. I don't know," admitted Zixil, watching the tactical display with growing unease. "But maintain positions. Be ready on my mark." On the Vorax command ship, Supreme Commander Drakthul observed the apparently disabled vessel with satisfaction, his bioluminescent patches pulsing in a pattern that indicated pleasure. "The primitive craft is neutralized. Their pathetic technology could not withstand our superior firepower. Prepare tractor beams. I want whatever technology they're using dissected and analyzed." "Supreme Commander," Vexcor cautioned, his own carapace dulled with concern, "our sensors indicate the vessel may still have functional systems. This could be a deception." "Nonsense!" Drakthul dismissed the warning with a contemptuous wave of his armored limb. "No species would deliberately appear vulnerable in the midst of battle. It is irrational. It is prey behavior." The Vorax flagship extended its energy fields toward the drifting human vessel. As soon as the tractor beam made contact, the Tenacity surged back to life, all systems coming online simultaneously in a brilliant display of lights and energy. "Now!" shouted Reeves, slamming his fist on his armrest. The human ship's engines flared impossibly bright as it accelerated directly toward the Vorax flagship, using the enemy's own tractor beam as a guide path. Simultaneously, a barrage of the erratic missiles launched from concealed ports, their trajectories forming a complex three-dimensional web around the flagship. "All Confederation vessels fire on designated targets," ordered Zixil, his voice resonating with authority. The combined assault caught the Vorax fleet by surprise. As their escort vessels were engaged by Confederation ships, the Tenacity closed on the flagship at suicidal speed, trailing fire and debris like a comet. "They're going to collide," gasped Commander Plex, his scales paling to an almost white shade. At the last possible moment, the human ship executed an impossible maneuver, skimming along the hull of the Vorax flagship close enough to leave scrape marks on both vessels. As it did, a series of objects detached from the Tenacity. "What are those?" Zixil asked, his eyes struggling to focus on the small objects as they magnetically attached to the enemy flagship's hull. "Mining charges," explained Jasmine over the comm, grinning despite the blood trickling from her nose due to G-forces. "Repurposed with a little extra kick. We use them to crack open asteroids. They work pretty well on capital ships too. Plus, we added some of that fancy Vorax explosives we, acquired from a supply depot last month." The devices attached to the Vorax flagship's hull and detonated in sequence, creating a cascading failure in the shield generators. The massive vessel shuddered as critical systems failed, great gouts of atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. "All ships, concentrate fire on the Vorax flagship," Zixil ordered, seizing the unexpected opportunity. "Target exposed sections, maximum yield." The combined firepower of the remaining Confederation fleet converged on the now vulnerable Vorax command ship. On its bridge, Supreme Commander Drakthul watched in disbelief as system after system failed, the deck buckling beneath his feet. "Impossible," he snarled, green ichor seeping from a wound in his carapace. "How could primitives—" "Vexcor, order the fleet to retreat. We must regroup." "Communications are offline, Supreme Commander," reported a terrified junior officer. "We are cut off from the fleet." Then use the emergency protocols, use light signals, use courier drones. I don't care if you have to throw messages in bottles out the airlock, just get the order to retreat to our forces." The Vorax forces began to disengage, their formation dissolving without the coordinating presence of their flagship. The Confederation vessels, reinvigorated by the unexpected turn of events, pressed their advantage, picking off stragglers and damaged ships. "They're retreating," announced Trell, mandibles clicking in excitement. "The Vorax are actually retreating. I have never seen this in my entire career." Ragged cheer went up from the Confederation bridge crew. For many, it was their first victory against the seemingly unstoppable Vorax. On the view screen, the battered but still functional Tenacity drifted into view, trailing coolant and debris, but undeniably intact. "So," said Captain Reeves, looking decidedly smug despite the chaos visible on his bridge, "about that Confederation membership application. Does saving your entire sector count as extra credit?" 6 hours later, Admiral Zixil found himself in the uncomfortable position of hosting a delegation from the human vessel aboard the Eternal Vigilance. Despite protocol dictating formal reception procedures, the humans had insisted on what they called a victory party, complete with their own beverages and food items that smelled both enticing and vaguely alarming. "Let me get this straight," Zixil said to Captain Reeves, who was consuming a beverage that analysis indicated contained ethanol in quantities that should have been toxic. "Your species was denied Confederation membership, so you secretly established observation posts throughout contested space to study both our technology and Vorax systems?" "Pretty much," nodded Reeves, taking another sip. "The Confederation told us we weren't ready. Rather than argue, we decided to prepare ourselves. Nothing motivates humans like being told we can't join the club." "By stealing technology." "By learning," corrected a new human Zixil hadn't met before, who wore a more formal uniform than the others. "Political Officer Theo Hayes, Captain. We prefer the term accelerated research through opportunistic acquisition." "It sounds much better in diplomatic communiques." Zixil's translator matrix struggled with the phrase. "That sounds like theft with extra words." "Welcome to diplomacy," Hayes smiled, raising a glass in mock toast. "Look, Admiral, humans have a long history of playing catch-up. When we encounter more advanced civilizations, we adapt quickly. It's our specialty. We see what works, we improve on it, we make it our own. Your specialty appears to be reckless endangerment and violation of established combat protocols," Zixil said stiffly. "The Council has specific regulations regarding proper battlefield conduct." "Your Council's regulations were written by species who've never had to fight for their very existence," interjected Jasmine Chen, who was somehow still working, modifying a Confederation datapad with tools from her pocket. "Earth has never been united until recently. We spent millennia fighting each other, developing ways to overcome superior forces through unconventional means. When you're outgunned, you get creative, or you get dead." "What Chief Engineer Chen means," Hayes said smoothly, shooting her a warning glance, "is that humanity offers the Confederation something unique. We think differently. The Vorax have consistently outmaneuvered your forces because they can predict your responses. They cannot predict us. Our chaos is our advantage." "Organized chaos," corrected Kwame Osi, who was consuming something called buffalo wings with evident enjoyment. "We're not just running around screaming. Well, not usually." Zixil couldn't argue with the results. A single human vessel had turned the tide of a battle that should have been a decisive Vorax victory. His career and, more importantly, the lives of millions of Confederation citizens in the sector had been saved by these unpredictable aliens. "The Council will need to be informed," he said finally, his tone softening. "I will recommend reconsideration of your application, with my personal endorsement." "Fantastic." Reeves clapped him on one of his 6 shoulders, a gesture that would have been a serious protocol violation among most Confederation species. "And while they're reconsidering, we have a few more ships on the way. Turns out we built more than one of these babies." Zixil's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "More? How many more?" "Enough to make a difference," Hayes said diplomatically. "Earth is fully committed to this alliance, Admiral. The Vorax threatened our colony ships last year. We take that personally. When humans say, 'never again,' we mean it." Meanwhile, in the Dominion headquarters several light-years away, Supreme Commander Drakthul faced his superiors via holographic projection. His normally imposing figure was diminished by bandages and support braces, a testament to the damage inflicted on his flagship. "Explain how a single unknown vessel was able to cause such devastation," demanded High Executor Krabmarak, his massive form dominating the projection field. "How did you allow a primitive craft to humiliate our forces?" "The vessel utilized unprecedented tactics and appeared to have intimate knowledge of our shield frequencies and formation protocols," Drakthul reported, struggling to maintain composure. "Intelligence suggests they are called humans, from a planet designated Earth." "Humans?" The High Executor's armored plates shifted in confusion. "The primitives from the isolated system? They were deemed irrelevant by our assessment teams just 7 cycles ago." "Their assessment appears to have been flawed," Drakthul said carefully, knowing that direct criticism of Dominion intelligence could be fatal. "They are unconventional, unpredictable, and dangerous. Their technology is a bizarre hybrid of their own designs and elements that appear to have been adapted from both our systems and Confederation standards." "They steal technology," the High Executor sounded outraged, luminescent patches flaring. "They improve upon it," Drakthul corrected. "Our preliminary analysis indicates their modifications often exploit weaknesses we weren't aware existed. They think differently. They employ tactics that defy strategic logic. They turned apparent defeat into an offensive opportunity. They used our own tractor beams against us." The High Executor was silent for a moment, his armored mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "A new assessment is required. If they ally formally with the Confederation, our strategic calculations must be adjusted. These humans must be studied more carefully." "There is more," Drakthul added reluctantly. "We have intercepted communications indicating this was not their only vessel. They have constructed others." "How many?" The High Executor leaned forward, his massive form looming larger in the projection. "Unknown. But if they are all as effective as this one," Drakthul let the implications hang in the air. "High Executor, I recommend immediate resource allocation to counter human-specific tactics. Their unpredictability makes them a unique threat." "Agreed. I will convene the War Council. These humans have earned our full attention. They will regret it." Back on the Confederation flagship, the impromptu celebration was winding down. Captain Reeves found himself standing with Admiral Zixil in the observation deck, watching as repair vessels tended to the damaged Confederation fleet against the backdrop of stars. "You realize," Zixil said, his voice low, "that by intervening in this conflict without authorization, your species has potentially accelerated a war that spans half the galaxy. The Vorax will not forget this defeat. They will study you now, adapt to you, target you specifically." "We didn't start this war," Reeves replied, his earlier joviality replaced with a sober intensity. "But we might help finish it. The Vorax have been expanding unchecked for too long. Sometimes you need a new player to change the game, a wild card no one was expecting." "And what do humans expect to gain from this intervention?" Reeves smiled, but there was a hardness to it now. "A seat at the table, recognition, the chance to explore the stars without being dismissed as primitives. Humans don't like being underestimated, Admiral. It tends to make us creative." "Creative." Zixil repeated the word as if it left an unpleasant taste. "Is that what you call mounting mining explosives on a military vessel and charging directly at an enemy flagship while broadcasting percussive audio transmissions?" "We call it thinking outside the box," Reeves grinned. "You'll get used to it, or at least you'll learn to appreciate the results. The Vorax certainly will." "I suspect the Confederation will have little choice," Zixil admitted. "The Council will not be pleased. They despise procedural irregularities, but they cannot argue with results. Your unorthodox methods have secured this sector when conventional tactics failed. That's all we ask. Judge us by what we accomplish, not by how long we've been traveling the stars or how pretty our starships are." Reeves raised his glass. "To new alliances." Zixil reluctantly extended one of his limbs in the human gesture of agreement to unexpected assets, and perhaps unexpected friends. As the Tenacity prepared to depart the following day, a formal communication arrived from Confederation High Command. Conditional approval had been granted for human observer status, with expedited consideration for full membership based on continued military cooperation. "Well, would you look at that?" Reeves announced to his bridge crew as they prepared for departure. "All it took was saving their entire fleet to get a foot in the door. If we'd known that, we could have skipped all those fancy diplomatic communiques." "To be fair, Captain," Lucy's disembodied voice commented from the overhead speakers, "conventional diplomatic channels generally don't involve improvised explosives and what you refer to as getting all up in their business. Some species prefer formal negotiations over near-suicidal heroics." "Their loss," shrugged Communications Officer Rodriguez, who was applying a patch to a burnt-out console. "I don't think the Admiral would have been nearly as impressed with our grammar and penmanship as he was with our ability to blow up Vorax ships." "Sometimes the direct approach works best," Kwame shrugged, running a diagnostic on the weapon systems. "Besides, I bet the Vorax are having some interesting conversations right about now." Jasmine looked up from her console, where she was inputting calculations for their next jump. "Next coordinates locked in, Captain. The Vorax have been spotted in the Capella sector. The Confederation's getting hammered there, too. Seems like they could use another dramatic rescue." "Then let's not keep them waiting." Reeves settled into his command chair, fastening his harness. "We've got a reputation to maintain now. Lucy, how are our systems looking?" "Considering we just survived what should have been certain death, surprisingly functional," the AI replied. "Shields at 62% after repairs, weapons at 87%, life support stable. We should be able to reach Capella without catastrophic failure, assuming you don't find something new to crash into along the way." "Your confidence is inspiring as always, Lucy," Reeves chuckled. "Lay in the course, Rodriguez." "Course laid in, Captain. FTL drive spinning up." "Play us out with something appropriate," Reeves ordered, leaning back in his chair. "May I suggest something subtle and diplomatic?" the AI asked with evident sarcasm. "Perhaps a gentle classical piece to reflect our newfound alliance?" "When has that ever been our style?" Reeves grinned, winking at his crew. "Give me something with attitude, something that says, humans have arrived and we're here to stay." As the CSS Tenacity engaged its engines and prepared to jump to FTL, powerful bass notes filled the bridge. The human crew nodded in rhythm, while their alien allies watched the departing ship on their monitors with a mixture of confusion, trepidation, and newfound respect. On the Confederation flagship, Admiral Zixil found himself unconsciously tapping one of his appendages to the beat of the strange human music still coming through the comms. Perhaps these unpredictable beings were exactly what the Confederation needed, a chaotic variable in an otherwise predictable conflict. Behind them, the stars of the Helios sector shone peacefully once more. Ahead lay uncertainty, war, and the beginning of humanity's journey into the galactic community. The balance of power had shifted, in ways none could yet fully comprehend. The unthinkable had arrived on the galactic battlefield. Humanity had entered the game, and the rules would never be the same again.